Hi world, it's the 1st of January 2025, it's about 2 p.m. UK time, and things have started off with a bang. So, a few days ago, did a global forecast, and I said that at the start of the new year, things were going to get a little bit crazy for 2 or 3 days. In a lot of the individual chart readings I've done, and the individual forecasts I've done in the last few days, I've said this Mars-Pluto opposition is going to be a stinker. Now, two and a half days ago, there was a plane crash in Korea. And I decided not to do a video at the immediate time of it because it was too insensitive. So many people, 176 people, lost their lives. And the circumstances around how the plane crashed, and particularly why its landing gear wasn't able to engage, are still yet to be revealed. When I looked at the chart, for the moment that the plane took off from Bangkok, which is the start of the flight, which is the time you do a chart for, the start of something, the birth of something. At that time, the plane took off from Bangkok airport on its journey to Korea, Mars in the sky was exactly on the midheaven. Pluto in the sky was exactly on the IC, and they were both squaring the ascendant in early Scorpio. Now that in itself is suggestive of trouble, but at the same time, the moon in the sky was conjunct Mercury, opposite Jupiter, with Mercury in Sagittarius, Jupiter's sign, and Jupiter in Gemini, Mercury's sign, and the moon was really amplifying this opposition, and all three of those planets were squaring Saturn. And this was a day where I was saying to a lot of people, don't travel on this day. This was I think it was the 29th. I was saying, don't travel, wait till tomorrow. And the crash happened, and I thought, oh, blimey, it's a lousy time to be in the sky. Now, because of the Mars-Pluto, they're digging deep into finding out what was going on, and it may be quite a time before we get an accurate assessment of what really happened with that plane crash. A few hours ago, 5 hours ago, 6 hours ago, from the time I'm recording this, 4.5 hours ago, something like that, there's another mass shooting in America, in New Orleans, where at least 10 people have died. The perpetrator has not been apprehended or killed, so I presume he's still at large. There's no information on this at the time that I'm recording this video. And I just thought, this stinks of Mars-Pluto, because the signature of Mars-Pluto is that of raw, unbridled rage and anger, which can lead to sudden, incisive, sharp developments, accidents, or acts of random violence, such as the plane crash, which was sudden and unexpected, or the mass shooting, which was obviously, I'm not going to say premeditated, but for someone to do what they did, it had to be planned. The Mars-Pluto opposition is a triple. It started in early November when Mars opposed Pluto at 29 degrees of Cancer and Capricorn. And I was expecting some big developments at that time, and not a lot happened. But now, as it's retrograde, I suggested earlier that with Mars retrograde, much of the anger is going to be internalized rather than expressed externally. And I still think that because a planet is retrograde, its effects are felt more internally rather than externally. And Mars is not yet exactly opposite Pluto for the second time. This happens in about 48 hours from now, with the third Mars-Pluto opposition happening somewhere around mid-late April. That's the final one. That'll be at 2, maybe 3 degrees of Leo and Aquarius. More on that near over time. So, because I'm an astrologer, I looked at the chart for the shooting at 3:15 a.m. local time in New Orleans today, 1st of January 2025. And I was expecting to find Mars, Pluto on the ascendant or something like that, or on the midheaven, and it wasn't. What I found was the moon at 29 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius, opposite Mars at 1 degree of Leo, retrograde. Moon opposite Mars, Moon conjunct Pluto, Mars opposite Pluto. It's a pretty strong assessment to say that the Mars-Pluto opposition is very strong at this time in the horoscope of the killer. And the moon actually being on top of Pluto and opposite Mars for this few hours, which is fading away as I speak now, really accentuated it and built it up into something much bigger than it needed to be. This is a bit like shutting the door after the horse has bolted, I know. But I'm going to repeat something I've said quite a few times in recent days. Mars is still opposite Pluto in the sky. And it's getting stronger in the very short term. It becomes exact on the 3rd of January, which is the day that Mercury also clears its retrograde shadow from its recent retrograde pass. So I don't think we're all collectively out of the woods yet. I don't think there's anything more that extreme likely to happen in the next 48 hours. But there's going to be a large number of people out there in the next 48 hours who have a lot of stuff in their individual horoscopes at 0-1 degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, who are getting triggered by this Mars-Pluto opposition. And they're liable to be more on a knife edge or to say or do something that they normally wouldn't than is normally the case. And if you're one of these, count to 10, folks. This Mars opposite Pluto is one of the most difficult aspects in the whole of astrology. It's much more difficult when it's by transit than it is when you're born with it. If you're born with it, you get used to it and you learn how to manage it into something sharp and focused and concentrated. Dealing with power, you become a black belt in Aikido or Judo, or you become a nuclear or a mechanical engineer. Dealing with deep power systems, you learn to work with it. But by transit, it's a short, sharp. Obviously, the killer's got something going on. I'm not making excuses. A lot of people have died. And a lot of people died in the plane crash. If astrology were in use, if astrologers were advising corporations, parliaments, governments, travel companies, and police forces, then I think that 50% of the world's woes would be able to be alleviated and ameliorated. But for that to happen, it's just going to take such a radical shift. It's not going to happen. It's never happened in human history. The human history, because for the documentary I've been doing, human history shows that from time immemorial, from the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Romans, onwards to today, astrologers have been welcome whilst they predict things that the leaders want to hear. But as soon as they start telling the truth, off with their heads. I'm not going to get into things around gun control because I'll get too many criticisms. I'm just glad I live in a country where there are no guns, or very few. What I will say is this. The Mars-Pluto opposition is still around, and it's going to be around for the next 2 to 3 days. Be careful, and wherever you feel that there's situations involving the potential for conflict, danger, or risk, walk away. Don't mix it, because Mars opposite Pluto is merciless. Be careful out there, folks. I have said that the first 2 or 3 days of January are one of the 3 most difficult times of 2025. So I'll speak to you again in a day or two's time. Take care. Bye now.